Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Tech Woke Podcast. I am your host, Chris, RMS specialist inside the GovTech space. And in today's podcast, we have an amazing guest. His name is Jason Dion. Jason Dion has trained over 1 million people on how to get into cybersecurity, has different certification training like the A+, Security Plus, has trained a lot of people to get into the career, helped so many people. He has two businesses that he created, Jason Dion Training, and then also you have Accolade. So without further ado, we have the great guest, Jason Dion. How you doing, sir?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Christopher.
Yeah, and again, I was telling you offline, I don't want to say it twice, but I want to make sure that the audience can see, my appreciation. Just thank you for coming on this podcast. This is a coming home moment. I remember when I was just coming home, I was training for the Security Plus, and I needed one thing to get me through. And I took your test training for the Security Plus, and it mirrored the test so much that when I took it, it was easier. So I just want to give you all the praises because I wouldn't even be where I'm at today without taking your training, other training. But I appreciate you coming on this podcast, man.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to help. And I find that when I am writing questions for the test, I try to make them as accurate to CompTIA or PeopleCert or whichever cert as possible. And in fact, funny story, I actually got a letter from PeopleCert at one point, and they had thought that we had copied their test because our questions were so close to the real thing.
It was good.
and they had to pull out like all the videos of me taking the test to see I didn't copy your test. And that like the last time I had taken the test was, a few years before. And it was a whole thing. But like, they're like, your questions are so accurate. Like you literally have one of the questions that's word for word on our test. I'm like, well, I just know how to dissect your questions based on your sample exams to know what things you're likely to ask. So I try to do that for my students. Because like you said, it makes it more comfortable for you guys as you're ready to take an exam if you've seen this kind of stuff before.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I'm telling you, the scenario questions, that a lot of people can't decipher those. Even me, I was like, what's going on? Firewall this, access control policy this. You literally break it down. Like you said, you decipher it so any regular person can understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I mean, a lot of times these questions on the test are not hard. It's just the way they word them. Like I know you have your Security Plus, and I'm not sure if you have CISSP yet, but when you go to CISSP, a lot of the stuff is the same stuff you learn in Security Plus. But the way they ask questions is so much more difficult, even though the same thing is being tested. And so just the way that you write a question can really make it a level 1 question or a level 5 question. And you'll see that between like Security Plus or Certified in Cyber or SSCP or Security or CISSP. They all ask the same things about firewalls and access control lists and encryption and blah, blah, blah. But like the way you ask the question is very different. Because if I just say, what is a firewall? That's a very direct question. But if I go, oh, here's a question about a firewall and here's all this scenario around it, I give you all this fluff and filler. Now you have to think like in the real world, how do you dissect what is the question being asked? Because that's really the key of what we do in the real world. Yeah,
and that's pretty much what it is. I did want to ask you a question. Sure. Listen, Jason, you have trained over 1 million plus people. That's amazing, by the way. What's the biggest roadblock you have when training for people that's trying to get a career in cybersecurity in general or IT?
I think the biggest thing that people struggle with is not knowing even where to start or what to do. I hear this all the time. Like I in fact, just this weekend, I was at a party and somebody said, hey, I heard you're a cyber guy and I'm interested in getting into cybersecurity. I'm like, that's awesome. What do you want to do in cybersecurity? They go, I want to be in cybersecurity. I hear it's a great career field. I'm like, well, it is, but cybersecurity is not a job. It is 30 plus different jobs, right? And so you have to figure out what job you want. Like I know you work, in the government contracting space. I used to work in and around the government space for a long time as well. And there are many, many different roles. There are jobs for IAM, which is identity and access management. There are jobs for system engineering and security engineering. There are firewall technicians. There are security operations analysts or SOC analysts, right? There are pen testers. There's all these different roles. And everyone is different. And me personally, I've not done all 30 roles. I've done about 10 of those 30 roles over my 25 plus year career, which is still more than most people. Most people do 1 or 2 of these roles for 20 or 30 years. And so, not even knowing where to start is usually the biggest challenge for people. And then even if they do know where they want to be, like I hear a lot of people, I want to be a pen tester because I saw Mr. Robot and it looks cool. And I want to be a hacker. I'm like, well, that's great. Now, what do you need to do to become a good hacker? And building out that roadmap of these are the certifications you need. These are the skills you need. These are the trainings you need. These are the type of environments you need to practice in. That's usually the hardest thing. And the best thing I can advise for somebody who's getting into it is the first thing you want to do is kind of look at the different careers that are out there and talk with people who are in them. So find people like me, find people like you, and go, hey, Chris, I know that you work as a blank, a SOC analyst. Can you just, I'll take you to coffee and be like, tell me about your day. What does it look like? Because so many people have told me I want to be a pen tester or a hacker. And then they talk to somebody who is a pen tester or a hacker. They go, oh, I don't want to do that. Because what they don't realize is 90% of the time is research, report writing, and analysis. It's not actually doing the hands-on keyboard hacking stuff. That's a very, very small part of being a pen tester. And so, understanding what you're going into, because to get to that role might take you 2, 3, 4 years. And if you're running towards that as your goal, and then you get there, you're like, this was a miserable goal. You're going to be miserable for the rest of your life. Yeah. I have a friend who went to law school, 7 years of college between undergrad and graduate to become a lawyer, and they hate being a lawyer, but now they're committed to doing it because they spent $300,000 in student loans to get there. So make sure what you're aiming for is what you really want to be at.
Yeah, because let me give you an example. I was a new person trying to get into cyber, and again, I watched your course. I thought cyber was cyber, so I was like, okay, well, I was a project manager. I can get into GRC. GRC is a good field, but it's a lot of work, man. It might not be for you. So you're advising in general, just like focus on one thing.
Yeah, I think it's figuring out what you want to do. And the nice thing is these days, when I started out back in the late 90s. So I'm showing my age here, but I'm a mid 40 year old guy. In fact, my birthday's next week, and I'm going to be 46. So I'm an older guy. Been doing this for a while. Been doing this about 25 years. And when I started out, we didn't have the benefit of things like YouTube and Discord channels or podcasts or any of this stuff, right? So the only way you kind of figured out what you wanted to do was starting to do stuff. Or maybe you met somebody and you're like, oh, you're in that field. Tell me about what you do. It was kind of old school, take them to coffee kind of thing. Nowadays, there's complete YouTube channels dedicated to a day in the life of a SOC analyst, a day in the life of a pen tester, a day in the life of a GRC specialist, right? And there's all these different things. You can watch those videos and start seeing what do you like and what don't you like. Going to GRC, I love that you bring up GRC. GRC, for those who don't know, governance, risk, and compliance. It's a great career field. Really good salaries. Generally, you're going to be making between $100,000 and $200,000 a year in those roles, depending on where you live in the U.S. Generally, you can get into one of those roles after 1 to 2 years of experience inside the world of IT and cyber. And my company, Accolade, we, just to be upfront here, we specialize in GRC certifications. We have ones around the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, the NIST AI RMF, and the Risk Management Framework. So we have 6 certifications that are all focused on that, and they really focused on GRC. So I'm a big GRC fan. That being said, you may not like being a GRC analyst. Me personally, I have done it many times in my career. It is a good career field, and you'll make good money, and it's a stable work that will not be replaced anytime soon by AI. But it is a lot of paperwork. It is a lot of detail-oriented stuff, and I don't love that, to be quite honest. I am more of a big picture guy. I like to run around and do a bunch of stuff, and I don't want to be a checklist-oriented guy going down the checklist. So I've managed GRC teams. I've been on GRC teams. But if I was picking a career field, me personally, Jason, it doesn't fit my personality style. On the other hand, I know people want to be pen testers. Pen testers is all about figuring things out and puzzles, and it's not the same way twice. And if you get frustrated doing things like escape rooms, you're not going to want to be a pen tester, because that's really your life as being a pen tester. It's a constant escape room over and over again. And so it's knowing yourself and knowing what you like doing. My kid is 21, and they like very regimented work. If they get a checklist and they can go step 1 to step 10, they're happy. So for them, GRC may be great. Pen testing would be horrible, right? And so it's knowing yourself and knowing where you want to be, and learning these kind of things is really helpful, I think.
No, that's a great analogy. The escape rooms, I hate them. I took a pen testing class, and I'm like, that's not for me. I can't do that. I would lose whatever hair I have left.
As you can see, I've already lost all mine.
So Jason, I'm gonna be a little bit selfish and ask you a question. You've been working, like you said, you've been working in this field for the 90s. You taught people, trained different people. Can you explain to me, and this is something that I'm struggling with, and this can also help newer people. In cybersecurity, it can be a little difficult because sometimes you might not know how to break down advanced topics. And as working in our career, you're gonna need to know how to do that while talking to different people, even teaching people. How would you recommend somebody do that and to progress their career?
Yeah, so for me, I find that being able to make an analogy to something I already know, and you probably already have seen this in the first 10 minutes of us talking, I use a lot of analogies. I find that helps me and usually helps my students. So if I go, oh, well, this thing, like a firewall, I know you took my Security Plus course. So one of the things I talk about a firewall is access control lists. And that's what allows or denies things into the building. So I'm like, oh, well, this is like if you go to the nightclub, there's the guy at the front door and he's got the checklist. He's like, oh, is Jason on the list? Yes, Jason can come in. Is Chris on the list? Nope, Chris has to go home. And that's what an ACL is. It's allowing and denying people access, right? And when I say that and you're sitting there on the test, you're like, oh, you can visualize that. You can picture it. Because a lot of times the stuff we're dealing with in cyber and IT, it's so fuzzy. It's ones and zeros that are in the middle of nowhere. Right. As we're talking, there's Wi-Fi signals going through the air and data is being transmitted. Right. But you can't see any of that unless you put up a PCAP catcher and you start capturing that traffic. But by being able to make analogies to this, it helps people. So one of the things I talk about with like Wi-Fi is, in the newer versions of Wi-Fi, we can almost create these like secure little pipes so that, when Chris is talking to my router, it's one pipe and I can't see into it. And I have another pipe between me and my router, even though they're invisible pipes through the airwaves. So I find breaking those complex topics down into something that you can relate to, it's something you can kind of hang on and your memory will catch it. It's just something I've always done since I was in middle school, high school, college. And so I teach people how to do that and kind of creating these frames around it. Otherwise, if it's just this abstract concept, it's hard to remember. Because if you try to memorize the Security Plus textbook that's 700 pages, I don't know about you, but I can't memorize 700 pages. That's just too much. But I can memorize the concepts or understand the concepts by applying them to other things I know. And so the more you can do that, the less you have to memorize and the more it just kind of becomes integrated into your knowledge system. And I've done a lot of study and work on learning and development. And really, the more you can take something and tie it to something you already know, it sticks longer than just trying to memorize, oh, port 80 is the web port and port 443 is secure web port, right? So things like that.
Yeah, I can tell you've been doing this a long time because when I asked you, you came firing. You gave analogies that people can recognize really, really, really quickly, and it helps. It helps people just because a lot of people are not technical, and you got to explain this to people. Yeah,
well, that's a great point because when I started teaching this stuff, I started teaching in a college classroom. So I was a professor at Anne Arundel Community College in Maryland. I taught for Liberty University in Virginia, and I taught for University of Maryland up in Maryland as well. And when I was, some of my students, I had 18-year-olds and I had 68-year-olds all in the same class. And so I have to kind of like go around and be like, okay, what analogy works with the 18-year-olds and what analogy works with the 68-year-olds? So I try to find things that are just universally acceptable, right? And people understand because they do have such cultural different backgrounds and things like that. But the more that I taught in person, I saw those quizzical like, looks. I'm like, okay, let me try this. And then I'd see where it landed. And so by the time you get to my video courses, 5 years after me being in the classroom for 5 years or 5 to 7 years, I had a lot of these analogies worked out just because I saw that live interaction with people.
Well, that's why you've taught over 1 million people. So hey, God chose you for a reason to do that. So Jason, like I talked to so many people in the cybersecurity space. I know you with certifications, you teach the A+ Security Plus. Yep. I know you have a new software that you're working on for GRC. I'm very familiar, Accolade and all this stuff. People sometimes come to you and say, what certification should I do? Even with me, I'm working on my CISSP, but I need my CISSP. Some people need a digital forensics cert to get in digital forensics. How would you guide somebody on getting certifications?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is they're not Pokemon cards. You don't have to collect them all. Because I see some people out there and they try to collect them all. Or they look at my resume on LinkedIn like, oh, well, Jason's got 30 plus certifications, so I should get 30 plus certifications. Generally, for most people, you need about 3 to 5 key certifications, right? Pretty much most of us start out with Security Plus. That's kind of the foundation. And you've done that. I've done that. And the good thing about Security Plus is, I'm going to say this first, Security Plus is not going to get you a job. Right. I hear so many people go, I'm getting my Security Plus, I'm going to get a job. Well, maybe. It is required for a lot of jobs, especially if you're in the government space. It covers 70 to 75% of the government jobs under the DoD 8570 requirement. So it is good to get, right? And I think that's why you have it because you're a government contractor as well, right? Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I got mine originally, because back in 2007, the government said, thou shall get Security Plus. I've been doing this for 15 years at that point. I'm like, okay, you want me to go get my Security Plus? I'll get my Security Plus. But I do find the value in that cert is that we all are now speaking the same language. We know what the basic fundamentals are. My big complaint with Security Plus is that it doesn't teach you how to do anything. It's a lot of knowledge, and it's kind of the good overview. So we talked about those 30 careers. There's a little bit of digital forensics. That's one career path. There's a little bit of GRC. That's another. There's a little bit of identity and information management. So that's another, right? There's a little bit of pen testing, a little bit of SOC analysis. So they've got all these little things, and you got 10 or 15 careers all thrown into Security Plus, but you're not going to be an expert in any of them. You're just going to get the groundwork. So that's kind of the first one I usually recommend. From there, you need to figure out where you want to go, right? And it sounds like you're getting put into either a level 3 engineering job on the operations side, or you're being a level 2 or level 3 manager in the government space, in which case you're going to need your CISSP. CISSP is a management certification. Again, you can get your CISSP, and it's not going to teach you how to do something. You're going to be asked and answered questions about a bunch of scenarios, right? And this is why, I'm going to go on a little side tangent here. The reason I created Accolade. So I'm a founder of Accolade, which is a new certification brand, came out about 3 years ago. And we don't look at ourselves as competing with the CISSPs or the Security Pluses of the world, but we want to complement them. So once you get your Security Plus and you're going to work in, let's say, GRC, you probably need to know about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. Well, in Security Plus, there are 3 paragraphs in the textbook on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. In CISSP, there is a page in the textbook on the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. But any GRC person can tell you that's what they spend 90% of their day on, is doing the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. So what we did was we actually took the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and made an entire certification just on it. And we made it practical and hands-on. So you're actually going through and doing things. So if you get your CCRP, which is your Certified Cyber Resilience Practitioner certification, that means you know the NIST Cybersecurity Framework inside and out. You can run an assessment and you can provide value to your clients, right, as a cybersecurity consultant. That's what we really focused on with that certification. And so, all that to say is, as you're thinking about where you want to go with your certs, there's a mix of knowledge and there's a mix of practical. If you just get the knowledge-based certs, like your Security Plus, your CISSP, your AZ900, your Cloud Practitioner from AWS, whatever, those are all knowledge certs. There's no practicality to them. But when you start doing things like OSCP, that's online, the Offensive Security Certified Professional, that is, how do you use Kali Linux and actually hack somebody and write up a report? That is what a junior pen tester needs to be able to pass, because it shows me you can hack, right? Similarly, there's ones like that for SOC analysts. There's blue team ones, there's red team ones. There's our stuff for GRC. There's lots of certifications out there. But as you figure out like what that career is, then you start picking out what are the 3 or 4 that you need. So I kind of recommend everybody starts with Security Plus, and then you start moving into your specific variant of where you want to go. And get those 2 or 3 to get you up there. I think I gave you a long answer to a short question, but that's kind of the way I think about things.
I had to hit you with that too. And I appreciate. Shout out to Accolade too. Make sure you check it out. But I did want to say also that's where training is going to now. It's more about you need to get practical experience and you need to prove something. So yeah, I appreciate you what you created. I know you've seen this trend a while back, so I'm glad you're on it and you're training people instead of just getting the certification. And there's no issue with that. Yeah.
And there's a lot of great trainings out there. And I think this also brings up the idea of, training versus certification, because they are 2 different things, right? And that's one of the things I always thought was interesting is when I took my CEH, which was, 15 years ago now, we had a trainer come in and they taught the whole class. And like literally he comes in, he goes, okay, we can do 1 of 2 things. I can teach you how to pass the exam this week, or I could teach you to hack this week. What do you guys want to do? And we're all like, we want to hack. He's like, great, I'll teach you how to hack. I'll give you the textbook. Go read the textbook over the weekend. You'll be able to pass the exam on Monday. And we all did. But we spent the entire week doing hands-on hacking and stuff, right? Generally, the CEH curriculum is not that. It is more, there's this tool. It's called Nmap. What do you use it for? Use it for port scanning. There's this tool. It's called Wireshark. What do you use it for? You use packet captures. But they didn't actually make you go in and do the stuff, right? With the old CEH where it was just A, B, C, D questions. And that's been my biggest problem with certification exams is that most of them are A, B, C, D based. They're mostly just multiple choice. There's not a lot of theory to it, or it's mostly theory. It's not a lot of practicality. But the training that goes along with all these certifications is awesome. Security Plus is a great example. If you take your Security Plus at diontraining.com, we have 40 hours of hands-on labs where you're going to configure firewalls. You're going to do packet captures. You're going to do SOC analysis work. But do you have to do any of that to actually pass the exam? No. You just need to memorize how to answer questions, right? Based on facts. And that's where the disconnect is with certifications and training right now. And again, that's why I started Accolade, because we are making certifications that are hands-on and practical, just like OSCP does for the hacking. We wanted to do that on the defensive side and the GRC side. But yeah, so keep that in mind. It's not that certifications are bad or training is bad, but just realize that you can go through all the training you want. But at the end of the day, as an employer, when I'm looking at your resume, there's nothing that validates you actually know how to do that thing except for certifications. And if certifications are just testing knowledge, then they're still not validating you know how to do that thing. And that's why we're starting to see this change in the certification market towards more practicality, CompTIA started this back in like the 2012s when they added those 2 or 3 performance-based questions at the beginning of your exam. But the bulk of their exam is still multiple choice knowledge-based questions.
Now, I love to hear that. Now, audience, make sure you're listening to what he's saying. But I have to segue into something. So I understand you do Security Plus training. I understand you're doing practical training for Security Plus. How much training is enough and before you start applying? And then 2, how much, because even for me, when I was studying for the Security Plus, how long you should be committing the time to getting these certifications? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it really does depend on your goal, right? If your goal is to get certified, you can get certified very, very quickly. There's a traditional boot camp methodology where you come in on Monday and by Friday, you've learned everything for 40 hours and you take an exam on Friday and you'll get certified. But the problem with that is by Monday, you've forgotten most of what you learned already because you can cram and pass an exam and get certified, but can you actually do the job, right? Then I see people who will spend a year trying to get their Security Plus because they are seeing, oh, it mentions the Nmap tool. Well, let me spend a week on Nmap and really dive deep into it. I think that is a little too far the other way. I think that the happy median is somewhere in the middle. Generally, for me, if you're looking at something like Security Plus, you should be thinking about 60 days is probably the right amount of time. That's enough time for you to dedicate an hour or 2 a day of studying. In my course in particular, it's about a 40-hour video course, plus the practice exams, plus the labs. And so it's designed that if you are doing essentially 1.5 hours a day of studying, you'll get through it in 2 months and pass the exam, and you'll actually have time to learn and understand the material. You can also, do the hour of video and then, fire up a virtual machine and start configuring a firewall and doing some of that hands-on stuff. So you're getting that balance of the two. It really, I think it's like everything in life. It's kind of finding that happy median. If I'm trying to pass a certification very quickly because I have a job interview, 2 weeks from now, and they want me to have Security Plus, yeah, you're just gonna have to cram and get through it, get the thing done, so you can go in and say, yes, I'm Security Plus certified. But then take the time afterwards to go back and try to fill in the holes in your knowledge, because you're gonna have a lot of knowledge, but you're not gonna have a lot of application, and start doing the application. On the other hand, if you're just doing application fully and it takes you a year to get certified, by the time you get to take the test, you're going to forget everything you learned at the beginning. So, that's too long. So I find 2 to 3 months for a certification is a pretty reasonable time, depending on the certification you're doing. Some are shorter. Some can be done in a couple of weeks. Like IDLE 4 Foundation, IDLE, is a 2-day in-course training. Most people do it on their own in about a week. But Security Plus is a little bit longer. So I would say probably about a month to 2 months is kind of on the short side. 2 to 3 is kind of the sweet spot. And then when you start going 6 months or beyond, you're going too far.
Yeah, and I would agree with you 100%. What happened was I failed the Security Plus twice, and I waited, I think the first time I took it, I waited like a year. And then the last time I took it, I waited like 30 days, but I still was able to retain most of the information so that when I went to go redo it, I had at least some of it in my head instead of taking that time to retrain myself on everything before taking it.
Yeah, and for those who are listening, if you fail one of the certification exams, most of them have what's called a cooling off period. So Security Plus or CompTIA in specific, if you fail today, you can go back tomorrow and take the exam. But if you fail tomorrow, you've got to wait 2 weeks before you can take it again. And if you fail it again, you've got to wait, I think, 30 days. So there's they want you, because there's only so many test questions, they don't want you just taking it until you just pass. So they kind of space it out so you have time to forget things.
Yeah, I got you. So make sure I didn't even know that. So thank you, Jason, for that. That's a good one. I wish you would save me some money. Yeah. but Jason, so this is the thing I wanted to bring up to you since I got you on. Certs versus experience. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit more. I wanted to hit it a couple more times, but I'm gonna hit it right now. Who would you rather hire? Somebody that has experience or somebody that has certs? Because I've seen people get jobs without having certs, and I know there's different use cases. But I know you've been hiring a lot of people in your past and currently. So who would you hire?
Who would I prefer to hire? Experience, 100%. Who actually gets hired? Generally, it's people with certs and experience, right? So this isn't really an either or question. And the reason why is if you think about it, if you've applied for a job in the last 5 years, how do you apply for a job these days? You go on LinkedIn, Monster, Dice, whatever. You fill in the little application and off your resume goes into the void, right? And at these companies, it scans your resume. And based on your resume, it's going to decide, do you check enough boxes for them to want to spend the time of interviewing you, right? I can tell you as an employer, the last job that I had, and I have a pretty small company of 30 to 40 people, we had over 1,000 applicants. I don't have time to read 1,000 applications because if I spent a minute on every resume that came in, that would be 1,000 minutes which would be, just hours and hours of work. It's like 15, 20 hours. It's like half my work week just reading applications before I even do an interview, before I even see if I want that person. So we have to use things like ATS, which is the applicant tracking system, to narrow things down. And applicant tracking systems are looking for keywords and key phrases, including things like Security Plus, Pen Test Plus, CISSP, whatever. So what often happens is if you're going in what we call the front door, right? You're applying through the website. If you don't have those, you're just going to get filtered out and no human's ever going to see your application. So while I'm not hiring because you have the cert, I'm never going to see you if you don't have the cert, right? On the other hand, to your point, you see people who are getting hired in who have experience without the certs. My guess, and tell me if I'm right or wrong here, I know you're in the government space, you're probably seeing guys who just retired off active duty military. So they have 10 years, 20 years of experience. They're already working in your facility in uniform, and now they're going to come back as a contractor. So the contract company knows, oh, Jason was a Navy officer. He's been doing this for 20 years. He knows what he's doing. And then usually they'll hire you and say, by the way, you have to meet the Security Plus requirement. If you don't have it, go get it next week and you'll be hired, right? So it's kind of a side role. Am I right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right. I've seen it a lot. I've seen it a lot of executives too. I think the DoD CIO, the previous one, I forgot her name, but she just became a contractor. So it's just everybody become a contractor. That's kind of how it works.
Yeah, it's this revolving door. And I did military for a long time, and I saw this all the time. People do their 20 years, they retire, they do their 4 years, they get out, and they immediately come right back in, right? And those are bypassing the hiring system. They're not coming in the front door through the applicant tracking system. Generally, it's, oh, I've been working with Chris for the last 5 years. Now I'm getting out of the military. Chris is going to be like, hey, Jason, come over to my contracting company and I'll put in your resume. But by you doing that, you've now bypassed the applicant tracking system and went right to a hiring manager. And for those listening, if you have friends who can do that for you, please do it. It will help you out. The problem is if you're brand new and you're like, hey, I just started, I'm working at McDonald's and I want to get into cyber, you're probably not going to have people in your community who can help bring you in like that. So that's why I say, like, well, I don't think certs are the end all be all. They are the thing that hiring managers use when they're filtering. And so if you don't have it, you're going to get filtered out, right? I'll tell you one more story on this. I was hiring for a government position back in the day. This was 15 years ago. And it was for a level 2 IAM, which is Information Assurance Manager, which meant under the DoD requirements, that person had to have a CISSP or could earn their CISSP within 6 months of being hired. And this was for an overseas position. So we were going to have to hire somebody, move them and their family overseas at a cost of $100,000 to the US government. And if they didn't get their CISSP within 6 months, we'd have to fire them and send them back home. The last 2 people we had hired, that's what happened. They couldn't get their CISSP and they got fired and had to go back home. So we are now been out of luck for these people. So we said, okay, this time we're hiring somebody who has a CISSP. I'm not even going to consider anybody who doesn't have it. Did that make them a better employee? No, but it meant that they met the requirement. So that's what we're looking for. So I told HR, here's the position. It's a GS-14. I need to have government level 14. I need to have a CISSP. Well, HR doesn't know what that means. So when I got out of the 1,000 applicants, 82 resumes ended up on my desk, and they all had the word CISSP on them. You know how many were actually certified CISSP? 3 out of 82. The other one said, attended a boot camp, planning to get my CISSP next week. They were trying to play the game of getting through the filters because this was before AI. And so they literally, HR just said, Control F, CISSP. Up, there's this word CISSP, give Jason the resume. So who got the interviews? The 3 that were certified. I threw out everybody else. And I looked at those 3 people, and one of those 3 guys got the job, right? Or guys or gals. And so, did CISSP get them the job? No, but it got them the interview. And those are the only 3 that I actually really deeply considered because of that. Now, because of government hiring rules, I had to review everybody's resume and figure out why I hired who I did. But at the end of the day, I really was only interested in people who had CISSP because I'd been burned twice before because this requirement had to send them home. So yeah, a cert can, quote, get you a job or at least get you an interview. But I look at certs as top of the funnel, right? It's you got your resume and you got your cert. Now you're in the hiring consideration. Now you may get an interview. And then if you get an interview, now you've got a pretty good chance of getting hired. Generally, what I've seen is that people will go from 1,000 resumes to 10 that they look at with some actual consideration. They'll do 5 interviews and they'll pick one person out of that. So if you get to the interview stage, you got like a 1 in 5 chance of getting hired at that point, right? That's the way I look at it. But I know some people put in 100 resumes to get 1 interview. It's because it's so easy to apply now. We as hiring managers are getting flooded with resumes, and so we have to use tools to narrow through. Sorry, I went on a long-winded
tangent,
Chris.
It helped me because even with me, I'm working on CSSP, and again, I do the resume thing. I say, oh, it's in progress. But if I just had the CISSP, it can go quicker because I'm in the door. And then I like how you touched on networking. Sometimes you got to network. It's about who you know. A lot of, like you said, a lot of government people know somebody and they just get the job. That's just how it works. So, yeah.
So I was in the military and around the military for a long time. And I will tell you that 95% at least of the people I know who got in the military, the way they got their job was not because they applied at LockheedMartin.com. It's because they were knowing people over their 20-year career. And they go, oh, John just got out of the military. Hey, John, I got a position. Do you want to work for me? In fact, my CTO at Accolade, it's somebody I worked with when I was in and around the military. He was a military officer. And I liked him. I trusted him. I knew him. I knew his capability. So when I went to hire a CTO, I didn't even put out an open application. I went to him and said, are you looking for a job, David? He goes, actually, I'm getting out of the Navy in 6 months. I'm like, great, you're coming to work for me. Right? And of course, we had to negotiate and make sure he was happy with that. But that's kind of the way a lot of these happen, especially when you get to those higher executive levels. Very rarely are you going to get an executive level because you put an application on Front Door or Monster or Dice. Usually it's going to be because somebody knows you and they pull you into that and say, we want you to apply, Chris. We know you. We've seen you over the last 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to get more into that. I wish I could stay there, but I got to transition just a little bit. I'll ask you some questions in the future. Just send you an email. I know you're busy, dude. But I did want to touch on something. You was in the military. You've been a professor. You had to change your career multiple times, and changing your mindset into tech in general. And this is to help other people. How did you change your mindset to get into cybersecurity? Because like you said, so many people don't want to get the cert. Some people don't want to get the bare minimum. How did you change your mindset to succeed as well as you are in business, in cybersecurity, in tech, and just even having a career? Break that down to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because so often when I talk with young high school and college students, they're thinking that their career is going to be a straight line. Like, I'm going to be this, and I'm just going to go straight up to get there. And generally, it doesn't actually look like that. Most of our careers, they take these weird angles and detours. And if you told me, how do I get to be Jason Dion today? I don't know how I would advise anybody of that, right? Because it's all the series of turns and twists over my career that got me there. I started out in 1996 working professionally in IT, what we then called just, IT, information technology. Nowadays we call it, technology in general. But, I worked at a computer repair store. It was an after-school job. I was installing, motherboards and RAM and troubleshooting computers and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, I've always been kind of entrepreneurial. And I wasn't making that much money working at the store. I'm like, man, they're charging these customers $50 an hour, but I'm getting $5 an hour. Maybe I should just do this on my own. So I put in some newspaper articles or ads in the old classified section, because again, I'm old. And I offer my services. And I started having law offices and realtors and small businesses in the area calling me. And basically I would come to their office and I would fix their computers and set up their networks and do their pen tests and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of created my own job early on. After 9/11, I actually sold my company and I joined the military. When I joined the military, I got out of computers and I went into the nuclear engineering role. So I was in the U.S. Navy. I was a nuclear reactor operator for the U.S. Navy for 4 years. When I did that, I was working as a nuclear reactor operator, and on my nights and weekends, I got my college degree. Once I got my college degree, I applied and became an officer. When I became an officer, they put me in flight school, and I was a naval flight officer, so I was the backseat of airplanes. Realized I really didn't like that, so I quit that job. I said, hey, transfer me. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when they transferred me. They go, well, looking at your resume, before you were in the Navy, you were a computer programmer, and you were a network designer, and you were this. You should go be a computer guy for us. So they basically took me and made me what's called an information professional, which is the career field in the Navy that does satellites, computers, networks, communication, cryptography, all that stuff. And I did that for 15 years with the military. And that's kind of where I got to this, where I've done all this different stuff, because in the military, every 2 to 3 years, you're in a new position. So I was doing pen test, I was doing GRC, I was doing identity, I was doing cryptography. I was running small networks and large networks. The largest network I ran had 1 million endpoints across 6 continents. The only continent we didn't support was Antarctica, right? So I mean, like, we had huge networks all over the place. I was in charge of the whole Middle East network for a while for the Navy. I was in charge of all of Europe for a while. Then I was in charge globally. So I did all these different things throughout my career because of the position I was in. And then, I wanted to become a college professor. And so I got a side job essentially as an adjunct professor at my local college. And that's where I got into teaching this stuff. That was about 10, 15 years ago. And then when I got out of the military, I kind of went full time into doing that. So it's been this kind of weird back and forth place that's pulled me all over the place. But because of it, I've gotten a lot of experience across a lot of areas. Like you, I was a project manager. I worked on a $30 million network installation project. I was, a cryptography person. I did key management. I've done kind of a little bit of everything. Like when you look at your Security Plus, like I've touched all those things because of the different jobs I had in the military. If I was just a normal, went and worked for IBM or Facebook, I think I would have had a more linear career. But because I had this military government path, I was just all over the place.
Okay, I got you. And you had to basically adapt to everything, man. And I thought I did my research. I didn't know that you was in the flight school. I didn't know all this. So it's good that I've studied you. I didn't even know that you did all that. So I appreciate you sharing that new information on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of that over the years I haven't shared because when you're in the military, you're not allowed to use your position for personal gain. So when I was in the military, when I started Dion training, I was still in the military. So I always say, like, my organization, I couldn't say, the U.S. Navy. I couldn't say I'm an officer in the Navy doing this, this, and this. But once I got out of the Navy and I'm retired, now I'm allowed to say that.
Okay. Well, Jason, I know you train millions of students, literally. There's a lot of people I've been working with or talking to lately that are a little older, maybe like 40, 50. I don't think 40 is old, but like 45 and up. Probably 50 and up.
No,
sir. but a little older. But I know you work with so many people. How would you coach somebody that's trying to adapt that mindset that they can still get in this field?
Yeah, so it's never too late. But I will say it is harder. Once you start looking like me and you're losing the hair up top, in America, we have laws against age discrimination. That being said, good luck proving they're discriminating you based on age. Most hiring managers are smart enough to not say, Chris, I'm not hiring you because you're 43 years old or however old you are, but they'll find another reason why they're not going to hire you and why they're going to hire that 25-year-old, right? And this honestly is just a mindset thing in employers. They're afraid of older people for a couple of reasons, right? The biggest one is they think you're only going to be there for a couple of years, then you're going to leave because you're going to retire soon, especially if you're in your 60s. They get really afraid at that point. That being said, I do have students who are older. Like, you could still do this, you could still break in, but it is going to be harder. Generally, I see my older students, once you hit 50 or above, it takes them 4 to 5 times as long to find a job as somebody who's in their 20s or 30s, right? Because like I said, there is age discrimination that happens. We just don't call it that, right? But it really is. Another thing is sometimes people look at somebody who's older and they go, oh, well, you're old, you don't understand technology. But this young person, they just natively understand technology because they're young, right? Because they grew up with it. I would say that's kind of BS, to be quite honest, because my kids are 19 and 21. And while they grew up with technology, they don't know how the technology works anymore because they don't have to. Because when they grew up with technology, it was easy. When we grew up with technology, and I think you're a little younger than me, but when I grew up with technology, if you wanted to play a video game, you had to learn how to, basically code in Visual Basic, or you had to be able to use DOS at the command line to even start your game. There was no point and click Windows, right? That didn't come out until, I was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, right? So like I learned on like old school stuff. And so I kind of learned that, and older folks have done that. So I will say it's a little bit harder. That being said, what are some things you can do to combat that? When you're writing your resume, do not go back more than 10 years. I don't care that you had a 50-year career already. Please don't do that. You're going to age yourself. If you went to college and your degree was from 1989 or 1999 or 2005, just write, got my degree. Don't put the date. Because as soon as I see, like for me, I graduated in 2005. You can start doing the math and go, well, most people graduate around 22 years old. If you graduate in 2005, it's now 2026. That's 21 years. So that means he's around 42 years old, right? You can kind of do that math in your head. I graduated a little bit later than most people, but you can kind of get a general idea. He's in his 40s, right? Mm-hmm. But if you see that they graduated in 2000 or 2020 or 2021, you're like, oh, they're in their 20s, right? You just kind of make that assumption. So so that's one of the things I recommend is leave the dates off if they're old, right? When you're going back in history, you need to show that you have some work history because people don't want to hire somebody who has no work history, but you also don't want to go back, 20 years either, right? And the only exception I would say that is, let's say you did something 20 years ago in the cyber or IT realm, and then you went to a different career path and you've been a project manager or retail services or whatever, and now you're trying to get back into it, then maybe you want to bring that in because it shows you have some experience. But again, is 20-year-old experience really going to be that helpful today? Probably not. So just think back to your last 2 or 3 jobs, bring that up the last 5 to 10 years. That'll help coach or prevent them from immediately eliminating you just based on your resume saying that you're old. Now, when you get in the office and you do the interview and I see you look like me, I now know you're somewhere in your 40s or 50s, right? Like there's no hiding this. You can see how old I am, right? But at least I got in the interview and now I have a chance to get that job because I can impress them with, yeah, I'm a little older, but here's all the things I bring to you. I've got life experience. I know how to come to work on time. I know how to dress appropriately for an interview, right? Like all the things that older folks tend to do that younger folks don't. And I know I'm sounding like old versus young, but I interview a lot of people and I've seen young folks who come in t-shirt and jeans. And I'm like, that's not really the culture here, right? Now, some places that's cool, but if you're going into a bank to go work for their IT security team, you should probably have a shirt and tie on, right? Because you're gonna have a better luck. And older folks just kind of know that naturally because that's how we grew up with things. So it's things like that that can kind of give you away, but it's not that you're hiding your age, but you don't want to be upfront with as much of, hey, I'm 60 years old, because people are just not gonna give you a chance. The other thing I've seen that works really well for older folks is they go and set up their own thing, right? They start doing their own consulting, they do their own businesses. If you're going into a consulting role, being a little older, having the gray hair or the bald head, that actually is a help because people look at you like you actually know what you're talking about. Now you have to be able to back that up with knowledge and theory and practical, but they will kind of defer. If there's a young person and an old person in the room, they kind of defer to the old person thinking they know what they're doing just because you are older once you get that job. But it's still, you got to break in and get that job.
Yeah, Jason, I'm going to definitely click this clip up because it's a lot of older folks that I talked to, and I think this is probably the best answer I've heard. I'm going to ask a couple people, but yeah, this is a great answer. I'm definitely going to clip this one so that the older folks can get some knowledge on this too. Because sometimes I don't know what to do because it's like, can the person still do it? But I believe they can do it, but does the employer think they can do it? But that's a good way to help them get opportunity.
And it really comes down to caging it in, I'm older, which means I have experience, right? Mm-hmm. And your experience may not be directly related to what you're doing now. Like you came from project management. Well, that's a lot of experience that can be really helpful. And maybe what you do, I like to call this the Texas two-step, right? If I was trying to hire Chris as he just got his Security Plus, I may not hire him for a cyber engineering role, right? Because he doesn't have the experience for that yet. But he does have a Security Plus now, and he does have, let's say, 5 years of experience being a project manager. He knows how to communicate. He knows how to do teams. He knows how to do his Gantt charts. He knows how to do his budgeting. He knows how to keep people on schedule and performance. Well, if I'm going to be going and doing a big pen test, that's a project, right? So he may become a lead for that team to help do the management of it. Or if we're doing a consulting engagement, that's a project. If we're doing a network install, that's a project. So maybe you go into IT project management first for a year or two, get more of that IT stink on you, and then you move into the more technical role that you want to get into. And I've seen a lot of people do that successfully when they're older. I had somebody who had a marketing background. She wanted to be a pen tester. She ended up getting hired by a pen test company to do all of their phishing training for all of their customers because she knew how to market and communicate. So they brought her in doing that. She did that for a year. And during that time, she upskilled. She worked with the team. She got her technical chops. And then they moved her into a junior pen test role. And then 2 years later now, she's a senior pen tester. But they would never have hired her as a junior pen tester because she was 40 years old and she had a Security Plus. So she used, I got this marketing background. You should hire me to do your training and your communications and your PowerPoint briefs and all that. And that's what they did. And then she was able to get her foot in the door. So sometimes you got to take that first step to get to the second step where you ultimately want to be.
Yeah, make sure you're listening. Make sure y'all listening. Jason, we're getting close to time. I know you got a lot of things going on. I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions and but I appreciate that. This has been a lot. I've learned a lot. So what I'm going to move on to next, we got a lot of things are going on. We got AI. We got AI compliance. We got cloud. We got all this new technology, even if in very few, not too long, quantum.
Yep.
With all these new trends, what are some things that people can do to future-proof yourself? Because people are just trying to get the Security Plus. What would you recommend they do? With all this
I think it's really a matter of you have to be looking ahead and where the world is going, right? I think we can all agree AI is not going anywhere. AI is here. AI is here to stay. Employers like it because they like the idea of we don't have to hire as many people. I will tell you as a person who uses it, I love using AI because it makes me more efficient. So getting your skills up where you can use AI effectively and securely is really important, right? If you're a programmer and you're not using things like Claude Code and Cursor today, you are just shooting yourself in the foot because the other guys are going to completely just bypass you. I mentioned, David, who's my CTO at Accolade. He is amazing with what he can put out and how fast he can put things out in a very fast, secure manner because he's learned these tools and he's learned them well. Now, a lot of people know how to use them, but they don't know how to use them well or securely. So being that person, that's going to be really helpful for you. When it comes to AI, right, there's this whole new AI governance thing that's coming out that we have to look at. How are we doing bias mitigation? How are we doing prompt engineering? How are we doing the engineering behind how these AIs talk to our systems and what data can be shared and what can't? Where's your data going when you go to ChatGPT and enter in a query right now? If you're on the free plan, you're the product. They're collecting all that, and that can go out in other places, right? So small businesses all need to accept AI and start using it, but they need people to help them do this. So a new area that you're seeing is AI consultants coming in and helping them learn that. So I think that's an area you want to be looking at. Cloud has been out for about 10, 15 years. There was a big push to the cloud. Now we're seeing a lot of people pull back into on-premise. These things go in cycles. I think we'll see in the next 5 years, people are going to go back to the cloud again. I think you're going to see that. So don't think that cloud's gone. And then cyber threats are evolving super quick, especially with AI. Because we have AI now that we can use things like Claude Code, we can create polymorphic malware like that, right? It used to take us days and weeks to write new malware. Now we can do it in a matter of minutes or hours, right? So how do we future-proof our careers? We're always learning. We're constantly learning the next thing. And this is where you have to be careful with certifications because a lot of people treat like Security Plus, this is the entry-level certification, so we all need to know it. So this textbook for Security Plus, this becomes my Bible. And if I know everything in here, I'm good. Well, the problem you have to remember is certifications get updated every 3 years. And so Security Plus, if you look at the current version, it doesn't even mention AI, right? The new version is coming out in October 2026, and it will have a objective on AI, but it's got one objective out of 35 objectives, right? So it's not going to fully teach you everything you need to know. So you're going to have to supplement that with other areas. You're going to have to learn on your own on some of this stuff because AI is changing so fast that it's taking these certification companies too long to catch up to it. Again, I'm not trying to make this into a promo, but Accolade, when we wrote our CCRF course, our course, our textbook, and our certification, version 1.1 of the framework was out. When version 2 came out of the framework, it completely changed a bunch of stuff. We had the entire curriculum, the entire textbook, and the entire certification redone within 60 to 90 days of that release and ready to go to teach the new stuff. That is not the typical certification model. If this was a CompTIA certification, they simply would have waited for the end of that 3-year cycle and then updated it. So, we just, sorry about that. We just did the A+ course last year, and they just added Windows 11 in. Well, Windows 11 has been out for a couple of years, right?
They just did it.
yeah, and that was in the version 1200, 1201 series, 1201, 1202 series course, right? Because they're on a 3-year cycle, and like, we don't care. We're staying on the 3-year cycle. So just remember that when you're getting a certification, it's current as of when they released it, not as of today. And with AI, things change every weeks to months. Certifications can't keep up with that generally because of the way they have to build these certifications. So I would say, how do you keep up? The best way is being involved with meetups, being involved with communities, and newsletters that will keep you updated. Some of my favorites are Simply Cyber. I think does a great job in the weekly newsletter. So Gerald Auger at Simply Cyber. If you aren't already with them, definitely sign up with those guys. They're great. They do a conference once a year as well. That's really good. At Accolade, we have tldrcybersecurity.com. So if you go to tldrcybersecurity.com/subscribe, you can join our community, which is completely free to you. You'll get emails once a week with information on not just certifications, but I'm telling you about there's this new exploit in the wild. There's this new thing that's happening. There's this new thing. And here's the things you should be doing to keep up with it. Really short, 5-minute read per week. It'll help keep you updated. But if you do that 5 minutes a week, it'll keep you current where you need to be. Also, if you go to that subscribe that I said, tldrcybersecurity.com/subscribe, if you give me your email, I'm going to send you back an ebook, which gives you the 2026 best certifications and roadmaps and things you need to know for this changing world. There's a chapter on AI. There's a chapter on cloud. There's a chapter on evolving cyber threats. There's a chapter on quantum. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, it's a short ebook. It's about 50, 60 pages. I'm happy to give that to you all. That same book is on Amazon for $20. I send it out to you guys for free in exchange for signing up for the mailing list, and then you'll be getting more information from me, and we can keep connected. And then we're also doing a cyber conference in March or April of this year, which is going to be completely free for you to attend as well. So if you're subscribed, we'll let you know about that as well. And we'd love to have you there. It's going to be 2 days. I think Chris is actually coming and speaking as well. We've talked about that. So you'll see Chris there for an hour. But we've got 2 days of great speakers. from all over the place that will really help bring your knowledge up in that, 16 hours over 2 days. You'll be able to just learn all the stuff you need to know to be current as of 2026. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No problem. I just want to let the audience know I have the link. I'm going to put the link in the description to get that free ebook. And make sure you check out Accolade. Make sure you check out Jason Dion training. I personally used it to help me with getting a Security Plus. So I have no problem just saying it or shouting it out because I already do it. I do it anyway. So just make sure you check it out. And it's very affordable. His training is very affordable. And it will help you get what you need to know. And also with this training, is recorded professionally. They have things that can help you out. And based off this podcast, hey, he knows what he's doing. Trust me. So Jason, I know you kind of mentioned your businesses, but where can the audience find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on accolade.com is usually the best way, which is AKYLADE.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. So linkedin.com/IN/Jason Dion. Love to connect with you there. I've got 40 or 50,000 people who are connected with me. So definitely connect there, and I post information there as well for just like our newsletter. So keep you up to date on what's going on in the certification realm and the AI, cloud, cyber threat intelligence world.
Okay, make sure you check out Jason, and then also Jason, I just want to. This is something I always do in my podcast. Just gonna ask you two more questions, and then we can call it. We're gonna end it.
Sure.
Where do you want to be at in the next 5 years? You accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
What do you want to do in the next 5 years? I know you had some things. I don't know if you want to say it publicly, but I already know it happened. But what are you trying to do for the next 5 years? And what is one thing you want to lead the audience with?
Yeah. So, really the next 5 years, my big goal is changing the way certifications are done. And that's a pretty big ask, right? So I started Accolade because I was trying to get the certification providers like ISC Squared and CompTIA and those folks to move into practical certifications. I couldn't get them to move. They're pretty happy with the way things work for them right now, right? It's pretty inexpensive to build certs the way they do. It's much more expensive to build them in a practical way. It's easier to test when it's ABCD than it is in a practical way, all those kind of things. So because I couldn't get them to do it, that's why I founded Accolade, and I'm doing it myself. Now, whether Accolade becomes big enough that you all start taking Accolade certifications instead of CompTIAs, I think that's a 5 or 10 year plan, right? Or I think that we'll become a big enough threat, for lack of a better term, that they go, oh, we need to start doing that too, and that will move them into those practical certifications as well. For me, either way, that's considered a win, right? Whether Accolade becomes the next CompTIA or CompTIA moves into this practical manner, I would consider that a win either way, because I think that's what we as the industry need. We need certifications that are practical, hands-on, because I'm tired of hiring somebody who has a Security Plus. They show up to work on Monday and they can't even reset a password in Windows. Like, that's just ridiculous to me. They don't know how to set up the user permissions. That kind of stuff, that should just be tested in the certification, and it's not, right? So that's one of the big wins that I'm looking for. And then the other thing that I've been focused on is getting this new newsletter going and these conferences every year, so that we can start helping more people break into the industry, because I'm really tired of the gatekeeping that happens. We get a lot of this where it's like, well, I'm in, and so now everybody has to look exactly like me and do everything I've done, right? Well, because I had to get a Security Plus and a CISSP, that means the next guy has to get a Security Plus and a CISSP. I think as AI tools come out for hiring, we should be able to do better jobs of hiring people based on their skills and their experience over certifications. But today we're not there yet, right? So we're still there. In 5 years, I think we probably will be, where you'll be going through an interview with an AI. So instead of me talking to Chris, it would be me talking to AI and then going, oh, Jason does know what he's talking about. Now let me give him to a hiring manager. And I think that'd be really helpful, because there are so many people who have the experience and the knowledge, but if they don't have the degree, they don't have the certification, no one will ever find them. So I would like to see that change. And then the second question was, I forgot.
What's one thing you want to lead the audience with?
The one thing I would say is, if you have a passion for this stuff, you can make it happen, right? It is going to take work. And I will say it is hard to break in. That first job is super discouraging, right? I know people who apply 100, 500, and 1,000 times before they get that first position. But that's only the first time that it's painful. Once you're in the community, because there's this gatekeeping that goes on, and you have that job, like Chris is a good example. He's in the community now. He's got a job. He's been doing it for a couple of years. I can find him another job in cybersecurity tomorrow. It wouldn't be hard. But if he had just gotten a Security Plus and he has 0 experience on his resume and he came from a project manager, it's going to be a little harder. If he has no experience because he came from McDonald's and Walmart working retail and he just got a Security Plus, it's probably going to take 1,000 applications. So be persistent. It's going to be hard. And the other thing I would recommend is part of that is networking. So go to B-Sides if you're close to one of those conferences. Go to something like Simply Cyber Conference. Go to Black Hills Information Securities Conference. They're all over the U.S. You don't have to travel far for these, but go to those and meet people. Be professional. Talk to them. Be like, oh, Chris, what do you do? And not like, hey, Chris, what do you do? And can you get me a job? But be like, Chris, tell me about your job. Tell me about what you do. Make friends. And that will turn into job and career opportunities later on, because that first job is always going to be the hardest. I'll tell you, I can help you get certified. And if you want to get your Security Plus, I can take anybody in this audience and get you your Security Plus in the next 5 to 10 days. It's not hard, right? But getting you the job, that's hard, right? And so like you got to have to be persistent and survive through it, because it's just, you're going to hear a lot of no's. So it's like almost like when you ever worked as if you ever worked as a telemarketer. I did that going through high school and college. I heard, 100 no's for every one yes. And so you just got to build up that thick skin and move through. It's going to happen. It's just the world that we're in today.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. I just reach out to people. I just reached out to Jason. I'm really surprised he reached out. He has 50,000 followers, and he just told me yes. So you never know. So I just want to use that as an analogy too. Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing: if you don't take a shot, you'll never get through the hoop, right? One of the people on my team, she's our learning and design specialist. She has a PhD in this stuff over at Dion Training. I wasn't hiring for that position. She emailed my customer support and was like, hey, I've gone through your courses. Here's where I think you can improve, and I'd like to help you do it. And by the way, if you're hiring, I'd be interested, right? And I interviewed her, and I fell in love with her from a professional level. And she's been on the team now for 4 or 5 years, and she's amazing and does great work and has really upped the elevation of our game versus just what I did, but what she brought to the table as well. And like, really, she just took her shot. Worst we would have said was, sorry, we're not hiring. Thanks. We're glad you're a student, but sorry, we're not hiring. Just like you, Chris. I could have been like, sorry, I'm busy. Can't do the podcast, but I appreciate you being a fan and being somebody who took my courses. But you never know. Sometimes people say yes. So give it a shot. That being said, don't email me on training saying, hey, I'm looking for a job, because we're not hiring right now. Sorry. But it was one of the things, like, I wasn't even thinking of that particular job, but it ended up working out because it wasn't just, hey, I'm looking for a job. Like, she literally sent in like, hey, if I was working for you, here's what I would do. And here's how I would change your stuff. I'm like, hey, I want that. Yeah, I'm going to bring you on. Right. So, but again, take your shot, because the worst somebody could say is no. I mean, we could just delete her email and she never heard from us. No harm, no foul.
Yeah. I just want to say, thank you, Jason, for giving me an hour of your time. Thank you for coming on the spot. You the game that you spent on this podcast or said on this podcast, that's very valuable, and I pray that somebody listen to this and can learn from a lot. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. So for people that's watching on YouTube, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also check out RMF Academy if you want to learn risk management and things like that. And remember, everybody, get 1% better every day. Peace out. I'll see you on the next one.